The Adventure of Rio, and the Magic Key. In a small village located at the foot of a mountain, there lived a boy named Rio. Rio was a curious child, always asking questions about everything around him, including the villagers who seemed gloomy, sad, and shrouded in fear. He lived with his mother and father in a simple wooden house, not far from a dense forest that often became the subject of eerie stories told by the villagers. The forest was known as a mysterious place, full of strange tales passed down through generations. However, Rio was not afraid. On the contrary, he was fascinated by it and often spent his time playing near the edge of the forest. That morning, as usual, Rio woke up earlier than his parents. The sun was shyly peeking through the sky, but Rio was already ready for his adventure. He wore his favorite t-shirt and shorts, carrying a small box of tools he typically used for exploring the forest. Light-footed, he left the house and walked toward the back of the yard, which bordered directly with the dense forest. Rio began to enter the forest. He walked along the familiar path, but this time, he was brave enough to venture deeper, away from the village, getting closer to a part of the forest he had never visited before. Along the way, he found a large rock covered in green moss. The rock seemed to have been there for ages, and something inside him told him that there was something important around it. Without thinking twice, Rio approached the rock and began to inspect his surroundings. On the side of the rock, he noticed the soil emitting a faint glow. Curious, Rio crouched down for a closer look. He dug and discovered a small wooden box, almost buried in the earth. The box appeared very old, with intricate carvings on its surface. Rio's curiosity grew stronger. He knew that the box must hold something important. Carefully, Rio lifted the box and cleared away the dirt on top of it. When the box opened, Rio found a rolled-up map made from a material that looked ancient. The map was tied with a faded golden thread. Slowly, Rio unrolled the map. His eyes widened as he saw a highly detailed map filled with strange symbols. The map depicted a familiar area, the forest where Rio was, but there was one spot that caught his attention, a location marked with a mysterious symbol in the center of the forest. The map also contained very ancient writing, almost impossible to read, but one sentence was quite clear: the hidden treasure will only be found by those with a pure heart. Rio's heart raced. What had he just found? Could this truly be a treasure map? With overwhelming curiosity, Rio carefully tucked the map into his bag. His heart was filled with a great sense of wonder, and he knew that today marked the beginning of an unforgettable adventure. Just before leaving the spot, Rio gazed at the vast forest in front of him. He felt that the forest now held a great secret, ready for him to uncover. The next morning, Rio woke up earlier than usual. His eyes still sparkled with excitement as he remembered the treasure map he had found the day before. An indescribable feeling, between a burning curiosity and a surge of excitement, continued to fill his mind. He knew his adventure had only just begun. After breakfast, Rio packed the things he would need: a flashlight, water, a compass, and of course, the treasure map, now carefully rolled up and tucked into his backpack. His mother and father were still busy with their activities, so Rio felt no need to tell them about his plans. He knew that if he did, they would definitely forbid him from going into the forest. Carefully, Rio stepped out of the house toward the forest. As he walked farther from the village, the cool forest air greeted him. The tall trees with their large branches seemed to clear a path for Rio to walk deeper. The map he carried felt heavy in his hands, as if it was calling him to find something far greater than he could imagine. As Rio ventured deeper into the forest, he began to pay attention to every detail around him. Each step felt heavier because he had to be careful to avoid thorny bushes and tree roots creeping along the ground. But he ignored it. His enthusiasm outweighed the exhaustion starting to settle in his body. Several hours passed, and Rio began to feel slightly lost. The dense forest made it difficult to find clear clues. The map he carried showed the path he needed to take, but there were no obvious markers on the ground. Rio decided to stop for a moment and check the map again. As he studied the map, he remembered the words written on it: "The hidden treasure will only be found by those with a pure heart." Rio paused to reflect. What did pure heart really mean? Was this some kind of test he had to face before finding the treasure? These questions haunted his mind. Suddenly, Rio heard the sound of water trickling. The sound broke through his racing thoughts. He followed the sound and found a small stream flowing through the forest. At the edge of the stream, there was a large stone that stood out. There, Rio saw something that shocked him: an engraving that resembled the symbol on the map, a key carved into the stone. Rio approached cautiously and touched the stone. He felt a slight vibration within it. Unexpectedly, the stone shifted slightly, revealing a small hole beneath it. Carefully, Rio reached into the hole and felt something hidden inside. After a moment of searching, he managed to pull out a small key made of ancient metal. The key looked identical to the one depicted on the map. "This is it!" Rio exclaimed joyfully. This key must hold great significance in his adventure. But Rio also sensed that this was only the beginning. The true adventure was just starting, and many more challenges lay ahead before he could uncover the real treasure. With the key in hand, Rio moved further into the forest, ready to face the next challenge. After finding the key, Rio continued his journey into an increasingly mysterious area. The forest grew denser, with towering trees reaching high into the sky. Amidst the quiet forest, Rio arrived at a place that felt completely different: a massive old gate made from large trees intertwined, forming a natural entrance that was both captivating and awe-inspiring. The gate seemed like something forgotten by time, yet its presence stood out boldly among the thick, green foliage. The gate seemed to be waiting for Rio. But before he could approach any closer, a rumbling sound shook the ground beneath him. From behind the towering trees emerged a surprising figure, a dragon with fiery red scales that glimmered like flames. The dragon stared at him with piercing eyes, and from its mouth came a thundering voice. "No one may pass through this gate without my permission, for I am its guardian," the dragon said in a deep, commanding voice. Rio was startled but tried to remain calm. "I only wish to continue my journey, to go farther ahead," he replied politely, hoping the dragon would understand. The dragon chuckled softly, the sound crackling like fire. "Before you proceed, you must pass a test. A test that can only be answered by those who are pure of heart and wise," it said as it stepped closer. Rio felt a twinge of nervousness, but he knew this was a challenge he had to face if he wanted to move forward. "What is the test?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. The dragon raised its head and spoke in a more serious tone. "I will give you a riddle. If you answer it correctly, I will allow you to pass. However, if you fail, your journey ends here." Rio looked at the dragon intently. He knew this wasn't the time to hesitate. "Give me the riddle," he said confidently. The dragon, named Ember, nodded and began to pose a riddle that made Rio think deeply. "I am something that always existed in the past, yet can never return. I am something that can change destiny, yet cannot be touched. I am something that is alive, yet not real. What am I?" Rio stood still for a moment, processing every word in the riddle. He began to think, searching for the hidden meaning behind each phrase. The past, never returning, changing fate, these clues spun in his mind. He knew the answer was just within his grasp. After a moment of reflection, Rio answered carefully, "Memories." Ember studied Rio closely, as if measuring the depth of his thought. The riddle was difficult, but Rio felt certain his answer was correct. Seconds passed in tense silence. Suddenly, Ember smiled widely, and his small form emitted a soft glow. "Your answer is correct, young one," Ember said proudly. "Memories are something that always exist, though they can never return. You have shown wisdom and sincerity in your answer." The gate, made of large intertwining trees, slowly opened, allowing Rio to continue his journey. Ember nodded, signaling that Rio had passed the test. "Before you go," Ember said gently, "always remember to keep a pure heart in every step you take. This adventure is not just about finding treasure, but also about discovering who you truly are." Rio nodded respectfully, feeling grateful to continue his journey. With determined steps, she walked through the open gate, heading towards her next adventure, while keeping Ember's message in her heart. After that, Rio saw the cave. He carefully stepped inside the cave that appeared before him after following the instructions given by Ember, the gatekeeper. The atmosphere inside the cave felt very different. The air was damp and cold, biting at his skin, while only the sound of his footsteps filled the deep silence. The cave appeared vast, with high ceilings and walls full of strange shadows. However, something stood out in the darkness. Along the cave walls, there were thousands of glowing gemstones, shining with an eerie light, as if trying to illuminate the path for anyone daring enough to enter. The gemstones sparkled in various colors: red, blue, green, and purple, emitting a beautiful glow. Yet, despite the gemstones' light providing some illumination, the atmosphere in the cave still felt full of mystery. Rio walked further, searching for the next clue that might lead him to the treasure he sought. Although there were many beautiful gemstones around him, he could not find anything indicating the presence of treasure. There were no clues, no signs of the treasure that should have been there. Instead, the cave seemed increasingly perplexing, with the gemstone light reflecting unpredictable shadows. Rio paused for a moment and thought. There was something odd about the gemstone light, like a hidden pattern behind its sparkle. He began focusing on the light reflected by the gemstones around him, trying to figure out what could be discovered. Suddenly, he realized that the shadows on the cave walls appeared to form a pattern. The pattern resembled a shape he had seen on the map he had found earlier, a symbol that seemed related to light and shadow. Carefully, Rio followed the shadows, and at the end of the cave, he found an old treasure chest that was glimmering. Shaking, Rio opened the chest using the key he had obtained earlier. Inside, he found something truly special, a glowing golden key. The key looked simple, but its handle was engraved with fine, sparkling carvings, as if indicating the power and uniqueness it possessed. Rio held the golden key carefully, feeling its weight and significance. This was no ordinary key, it was a key that could open many doors, not physical doors, but doors to goodness, truth, and new opportunities. He felt as though a new world had opened before him, and with this key, he could unlock various doors leading to positive changes. However, before he could ponder the meaning of this discovery any deeper, a soft whisper echoed in the cave. Remember, Rio, true treasure is not what can be seen with the eyes, but what lies in the heart. Guard your heart and intentions, and use this key to open the doors of goodness in your life, the voice whispered, as if coming from within himself. Rio looked at the golden key in his hand, feeling the depth of the message. With stronger determination, he stepped out of the cave, carrying the key with a heart full of hope for the next adventure. Rio returned to his village with more confident steps, the golden key still tightly gripped in his hand. The long and challenging journey had come to an end, but his adventure seemed to have just begun. Along the road to the village, he reflected, trying to understand the true meaning behind the treasure he had discovered. The treasure, which he had expected to be gold or precious jewels, turned out to be nothing more than a simple key, yet its meaning was so profound. Upon reaching the village, Rio was warmly welcomed by the villagers, who were eager to hear news from him. Faces that had once been filled with doubt now looked at him with curiosity. They had heard stories about Rio's journey, the riddles and obstacles he had faced, and of course, the treasure he had found. However, Rio knew that the golden key he carried was not the answer. He went to the homes of people he knew, visiting those who had seemed distant and closed off. Rio realized that the golden key wasn't meant to open a chest filled with gems or money, but to open the hearts that had been locked away. In the village, many people had wounded and forgotten hearts, trapped in despair and doubt. Rio decided to change all of that. At Mr. Jacob's house, an elderly farmer who had not spoken much to anyone for years, Rio knocked on the door. Mr. Jacob opened the door with a stiff face, but Rio simply smiled and offered a conversation. "Mr. Jacob, how are you?" he asked sincerely. Mr. Jacob looked surprised but invited Rio inside. Their conversation began in silence, but Rio spoke from the heart. He shared about his long journey, the challenges he had faced, and, more importantly, how he had realized that true courage was the courage to open one's heart and share with others. Slowly, Mr. Jacob began to speak of his past, of the sadness he had buried for years. Rio listened attentively, giving space for Mr. Jacob to share. After the conversation, Mr. Jacob smiled, for the first time in a long while. "Thank you, Rio," he said. "You've unlocked my heart that was closed all this time." Rio felt relieved. He knew that the golden key he had found was not just for opening physical doors, but for unlocking the doors of hearts that had been shut by pain and fear. With that key, Rio began helping people in his village. He helped them open the doors to forgotten kindness, reminding them that true happiness lies in sharing and supporting one another. A few days later, the village began to change. People who had once been separated by walls of silence and distrust began to interact again. They started helping each other, sharing stories, and celebrating life together. Rio realized that this was the true treasure he had been searching for, not material wealth, but the courage to share, to open hearts, and to create goodness together. Rio stood in the center of his village, feeling an indescribable happiness. He knew that this journey was not just for himself, but for every person he met. With the golden key in his hand, he had found the key to unlocking goodness and trust in the hearts of those around him. The true treasure is the kindness shared with a sincere heart. There is a profound moral message in Rio's adventure story. Among them, first, courage. Rio teaches that in life, we must be brave enough to face all challenges and obstacles. Although the path is often filled with difficulties, every problem that arises brings valuable lessons that will help us grow into stronger individuals. The courage to face challenges is the first step towards success, both in adventures and in everyday life. Second, kindness. True wealth does not lie in material riches, but in our ability to share and help others sincerely. Rio opens the hearts of the people in his village with kindness and attention, and this is what makes him a true hero. Kindness is a power that can unite people and create happiness that is priceless. Third, wisdom. Using both the mind and the heart to solve problems is very important. Rio does not rely solely on physical strength to overcome challenges, but he uses wisdom and careful consideration in facing each puzzle. Wisdom does not come easily, but is gained through experience and continuous learning. And finally, Self-belief. Rio teaches us to always believe in our own abilities. Sometimes, the path to true wealth is not clearly visible, but with confidence and the courage to keep moving forward, we will find riches that are more valuable in the form of experience and wisdom. Believing in ourselves is the key to unlocking our true potential. That's the story of Rio's adventure and the magic key. Good night and sweet dreams.